Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the microscopic and, kind of menacing world of viruses. We're going to break down their 6-step plan for invasion, from the very first breach all the way to the final escape. Let's get right into it.
If you strip away all the complexity, all the different shapes and sizes, you find that every single virus is driven by one relentless mission.
To make more of itself. But here's the catch. It can't do this alone. It needs a host. It needs us. And the process it uses to pull that off, well, that's its invasion plan.
So let's start right there, with the mission objective. Before you can understand any invasion, you first have to understand the attacker's capabilities, not just if it can do damage, but how much damage it can do.
And this is a really critical distinction. Pathogenicity is a simple yes or no question. Can this virus cause disease? Virulence, though, that answers how much. It's the measure of damage. Think of it like the difference between a mischievous prankster and a full-blown supervillain.
And what's really crucial here is that this level of virulence isn't set in stone. Even tiny little mutations in a virus's genetic code can weaken it dramatically, creating what scientists call an avirulent strain. This very principle is the genius behind so many of our vaccines. We introduce a weakened, less virulent virus to teach our immune system how to fight without us actually having to get seriously sick.
Okay, so this right here, this is the playbook. This is the core of our explainer today. These 6 steps are the sequence that pretty much every successful virus has to follow to survive and spread. So let's start with step 1, invade the host.
First things first, the virus has to get inside. Our bodies have walls, they have gates, they have guards. So infiltration is the absolute first phase of this whole invasion.
Now, a successful breach isn't easy. 3 conditions have to be met. First, you need enough of the virus. A single particle almost never gets the job done. Second, the virus has to find the perfect target cells. And third, our local defenses have to be down, even if it's just for a moment. That second condition brings us to a really important concept, tropism. This is just the fancy word for a virus's preference for specific cells. The best way to think about it is like a key and a lock. A protein on the virus's surface is the key, and it will only attach to a cell that has the matching receptor or lock. It's why the flu virus goes for your respiratory system and not, say, your liver.
So where are these gates? Well, a virus has a lot of options. The respiratory tract is by far the most common superhighway for viruses, but they can also get in through our food, through little cuts in our skin, our eyes, and they can even be passed from a mother to her child right across the placenta.
Okay, the virus is in. That's step 1, complete. Now we get to steps 2 and 3, replicate locally and overcome defenses. This right here is the main event. The cellular hijack. Viruses basically have 2 main strategies for this takeover. We can call them the bursters and the creepers. The bursters, they're dramatic. They hijack a cell, replicate like crazy, and then they lyse or burst the cell wide open, releasing this massive flood of new viruses. The creepers are a bit more subtle. They actually cause the infected cell to fuse with its neighbors, creating these giant supercells. This lets the virus spread from one cell to the next without ever having to expose itself to the body's defenses out in the open.
But this takeover isn't always so dramatic. Sometimes the virus plays a longer game. In what's called a latent infection, like with herpes viruses, it just hides its genetic code inside our cells and waits for a trigger. In a persistent infection, it releases new viruses slowly, without actually killing the host cell. And in the most serious cases, it can permanently change the cell's programming, a process called transformation that, can sometimes lead to cancer.
So the infection is started in one place, but a virus's ambition is much bigger than that. This brings us to step 4 of the invasion plan, spreading to other areas of the body.
This is a huge difference in how we actually experience being sick. A localized infection, like the common cold, pretty much stays put in your upper respiratory tract. But a systemic infection, something like measles, gets into the bloodstream or the nervous system and uses them like a highway system to travel and set up new infection sites all over your body.
This systemic spread is basically what we feel as the stages of sickness. That illness period, that's when the virus is hitting step 5, replicating in its new target areas, which causes the most severe and obvious symptoms.
And that final stage, convalescence, that's the good part. That's when your immune system finally starts to win the war.
The invasion is almost done. The virus has replicated, it's spread. But to truly succeed, to complete its mission, it needs an exit strategy. This is the final, crucial step of the whole plan. Step 6, the Great Escape. It has to get out to find a new host. And it's brilliant at this. It turns our own bodies against us, using our coughs, our sneezes, our saliva, and more as its personal escape routes to continue the cycle.
So what happens after all that? You know, when the dust settles. What are the long-term consequences of this big battle, both for the virus and for us, the host?
Well, the outcome generally follows one of two patterns. You have an acute infection, which is like a sprint. The virus replicates super fast, you get really sick, and then your immune system usually clears it out. These are the viruses that cause epidemics. But then you have persistent infections. These are more like a marathon. The immune system just can't get rid of it, and the virus sticks around for the long haul. And this brings us to one last, really fascinating paradox. You'd think the most destructive, the deadliest virus would be the most successful. But that's just not true. So why wouldn't it be? Well, the answer is surprisingly simple. A dead host is a dead end. The most successful viruses have evolved this elegant, if a bit menacing, logic. Keep the host alive and moving around just long enough to complete the mission and spread to somebody else. Something to think about. That's all for this explanator. Thanks for joining me.